So let's talk about the power bank, huh? So yeah, okay. So they asked for an ID, and all right. I don't have an ID. Hey, did you know this? I have been since September 21st of 2022 without any actual identification. No driver's license, no birth certificate, no social security card, no credit cards, including debit cards, none of the certificates I received for my industrial training, none of the original filings I submitted to the Supreme Court of the United States, or even the official versions of the court documents from my cases with the federal district here in Texas, in Dallas. None of that. I haven't had any of that. I haven't had any of that since September 21st of 2022. Today's July 3rd. September 21st of 2021. Today's July 3rd of 2022. I haven't had any identification, unless you include my electronic accounts, right? Like my YouTube account, maybe my LinkedIn account. I'm not allowed to have any other social media, right? I'm not allowed to have Twitter. That got stolen. I'm not allowed to have a Facebook. That got stolen. I, have a blog that every once in a while somebody else uses for some sort of brokering. And all of my electronic accounts, very frequently, somebody ends up accessing and altering information. As a matter of fact, they've stolen evidence in my emails. And they've also stolen original filings that I had as electronic copies in my emails. They've also got it into the documents I have in one of my email accounts, and they've altered it or they've deleted it. And they've been doing this frequently. And they've actually been doing it for several years. But right now, I don't have any ID except for this, right? But let's talk about that power bank. Now, there's a variety of ways you could look at this, including legally, including understanding that, kind of system they've set up. And I've been warning about this for years. The system they set up for the girls. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a biological girl. My understanding is that, by and large, it's not just for girls. It's also for boys, right? But primarily girls. And the understanding is you don't really need an ID, at least not your own ID, right? As long as your ID matches the card. And there's enough of a likeness, right? But you don't even really need it, because usually what they do is they give you some prepaid debit card. And the idea is that if you get a prepaid debit card, you can actually register it online. And when you register it online, you might be able to deposit money. And the hope was, well, even if you got bad credit, you could start with a reloadable prepaid debit card, and you might be able to build some credit. They never give you that fucking option. Nobody ever gives you that fucking option. No. Instead, what I understand they do is they get these prepaid debit cards, and they give them to the girls, and they open up the electronic accounts. And they take care of whatever business they want to take care of when they give these girls these debit cards. And so these girls go and they spend it on whatever. Well, now they've done a different thing. They've done it since December of this year. And it's completely disgusting, which is they don't even give you a prepaid debit Visa card anymore. They give you merchandise credit at stores. Or they give you a so-called gift card for a store. Now, I talked about 2017. I actually did a very extensive report in regards to the Walmart cards, how they would periodically give Walmart cards to people on the streets, people who were homeless, including people that presumably were going through some sort of job training program or some sort of job assistance program. And I did a very, very comprehensive report on that, including after I went to Austin and I followed up in Dallas, with specifically my understanding of the Walmart database system and how Walmart's database system is actually pre-programming people's consumer options. And about February of 2017, I met a man from San Francisco Bay Area. It's about my age. Actually about my age. He said that he is an African-American man. He said he had studied computer programming. Given conversations I had with him, I had absolutely no doubt about his real skills and capabilities. But at some point, when he was working on his master's thesis, he ended up getting diagnosed with mental illness. I actually believe that's bullshit. I believe what really happened is what he was talking about is the use of symbolic language, and specifically how various kinds of iconography resonates with people based on their cultural or ethnic history. And I believe that whatever he was doing in connection with his actual study and his actual intended professional development was conflicting with some other people that had a different idea, specifically about people of color when it comes to software development or when it comes to computer programming and their relationship with symbolic language. After he ended up getting diagnosed with this mental illness, he said his life began to change. He actually showed me something he said a buddy of his was working on, who was a military veteran, who was trying to make a movie. It was kind of like his own dystopian kind of situation. He showed me the trailer. He said the problem is that before the guy finished the movie, he ended up dying of a heart attack, right? After that, I made an agreement to meet with the guy. I never saw him again. Never saw him again after that. Why am I thinking of this guy right now? Well, because this is a story that I think has been too often, right? Way too often. But what he was talking about at that time I had that conversation with him, it began to turn through my mind based on my own efforts to originally try to apply for a mobile app development class, and in connection with what I had been studying subsequent to that in preparation for what I had intended to study, which I ended up studying later, which was this understanding of how various databases can ascribe different kinds of attributes and allow for some sort of functionality whereby they combine variables, including through accounts associated with different people, to create composites of a multiplicity of people. And I actually did this thing in March of 2017 where I went through and did a survey of British common law or English common law regarding property rights. And I, as a sort of visual aid, I guess you could say, or a visual expression of my thesis, was I made a spreadsheet that actually listed the areas of common law identified as property and the different kinds of property rights under common law, and then listed attributes of those common law property rights as a way to identify if someone could look through, say, a CV or a resume, and then actually identify people's human capital as a form of property, and then could assign for themselves or ascribe for themselves that particular indication of someone's human capital as property that they could then claim. And my concern was that what was happening is that people that were incredibly high functioning and people that were otherwise wealthy, very wealthy people and very capable people, were being misrepresented as having a mental illness so that they could be put into some sort of situation where their mental competency or capacity to engage a contract was allowed to be encroached upon and then assigned either illegally or without their foreknowledge, and especially without their full informed consent based upon what the relationship actually meant, to somebody as either a charge, as if that person was a representative, for instance, a risk representative, or a so-called caseworker, or even an attorney that then abused the actual law regarding mental capacity and or capacity to engage a contract, and it was brokering away people's property rights. And my major concern is that what they were doing is that they were doing it on some sort of timeshare, as if they take your life and they do something equivalent to make a spreadsheet with all of the different kinds of property an individual can have. And then they identify within those constructs or those concepts of what the property is, the classification of the property, the specific inventory of your human capital. And then they loan it out, or they rent it out, or they swap it out, or they try to make some sort of derivative product, including as part of a composite of your and other people's human capital. And if you have economic events in your life, such as you guys were at an event together, or maybe you went on a date together, or maybe you had a lease together, and they're able to get some kind of leverage, including and especially if they get a mental health diagnosis on you, or if you get arrested and charged with a crime, regardless of whether or not you're convicted of the crime. Then they make this catalog of your human capital, and they ascribe it as property for somebody else to purchase or even lease. And they never tell you about it. And they use surveillance as a way to spy on you. And not only do they steal from you in the course of capturing through your intersections with the public in the surveillance system, whatever you produce in public, but they also do things where they modify or alter the electronic records they got from these surveillance regimes in order to create misrepresentations and fabrications of your identity and potentially even use it to extort you if you do not exhibit the kind of behavior that your propertied owner, your overseer, expects for you to exhibit in order to register the price point on the transaction he's working during his timeshare, or hers, right? And this is what they were doing. This is what their whole bullshit venture capital investment in mental health is. And that this is really what the Affordable Care Act is about. And that part of what happened as part of the 2008 banking bailout is they did this huge psyop on everybody. That what happened is when these big banks went under, which I think was intentional. I think this was about an intentional, massive, global financial restructuring that was put under false pretenses. But they did something comparable to what they did with the demise of the former Soviet Union, which is they created this pageant of alleged organized crime or alleged global default or alleged crisis. And the whole psyop was, well, really what they were doing is they were making collateral calls, right? They were calling in collateral without telling any of us what the fuck that meant. And without telling any of us that we as human beings were actually their collateral. And that our lives and what we did legitimately, including politically, including socially, including economically, including sexually, was used as collateral on other people to say that they had been making money or making investments in all of these things. They didn't think that we were sophisticated enough to understand ourselves. That they want to pretend like it is really kind of simplified on another level, so they don't have to actually acknowledge what the processes are that they're engaging us in. And when they do their public reportings and when they do their public notices, that's actually a legal requirement. It's not a courtesy. And in connection with those legal requirements, there's actually standards they have to apply in order to be eligible to do business, period. And the whole thing about the 2008 banking bailout is that the way it conjuncted with the Affordable Care Act, there were a variety of ways they could have gone with that, including around exposing what Fast and Furious was, and including in connection with closing Gitmo, which were two of the major things that were going on during the 2008 campaign season. But even though a lot of people understood that a major reason why Barack Obama supposedly got elected was because of campaign promises he made around immigration reform and closing Gitmo within his first 100 days. What do we now identify as being the major accomplishment of the Obama era? Let me ask you a question. What is Obamacare relative to the 2008 banking bailout when it comes to collateral calls? I'm in Dallas right now. I just want you to know, right? And so by the time the Affordable Care Act came along, especially in the beginning of 2010, they were already into the first year of major implementation, which would have been the first year by which they would have had to report back on whatever they received as part of TARP or TALF or any of the other things that were going on in connection with the 2008 banking bailout, right? And what was happening to a lot of people? Well, we needed health care. And specifically, we needed our rights to health care respected insofar as if you were identified as having a disability, including a mental health disability, well, you had rights. We had rights as disabled people. See, I was one of those people. I never accepted I was disabled. I never accepted I had a mental illness. I actually was incredibly suspicious of the way they framed it. I told them, I said, I understand what's going on. What I understand is I'm hearing subliminal suggestions that are trying to get me to agree to commit crime or that I've already committed crimes that there's no way I could have committed. Well, you're having a delusion, and because there's a history of mental illness in your family, it's part of a genetic disorder. No. I understand somebody is sending me you're using some sort of vibrational technology to send me subliminal messaging that is saying that I've committed these crimes I end up seeing on TV and that they want me to agree to commit other crimes. Like I said, it's part of a delusion. It's part of, a mental illness. Based on what you said, you have a history of this in your family. It's part of a genetic disorder. We're going to give you some medication in order to help you adjust your levels, and then we're going to help you get programming in order to learn how to deal with it. I never believed it. And see, since then, I've now realized and learned, for instance, at the time, the very moment, the very time, I was at the hospital in San Francisco, right here in Dallas. They had a conference at UT that, among other things, was featuring a presentation by Raytheon Technologies regarding the development of directed energy weaponry. At the time, I was in the hospital in San Francisco. Right here in Dallas, Raytheon was doing a demonstration of directed energy weaponry at a university. There's no way, I believe, those so-called psychiatrists in San Francisco did not know about directed energy or radioencephalography. What is radioencephalography, especially in San Francisco? Well, I'll tell you one thing, it means something different if you're doing drugs and you don't want to have to deal with a drug test, right? Those laws have been on the books since before Healthy SF. So, for instance, now we're at the situation we're in right now. What about this power bank? What about this power bank? See, insofar as you have a portable electric source, right, that can help you recharge electronic items like cell phones or laptops or maybe even a battery-operated flashlight or radio or some other kind of device, then you got a backup, right? Because in order to charge the charger, you got to charge it somehow. What kind of electricity use are you going to use to power the power bank? Right? You're going to use solar? Well, I might, right? Because I have a backup. See, they stole the power bank I purchased specifically for electricity in the event that there was an emergency. But I had a backup. And they took the primary power bank, which was actually part of the system, was actually supposed to be secured, but they didn't take the security. They didn't take what would have actually been the security to secure the power banks. And they didn't take the backup. So now they have a, step down, right? Power bank with one of these merchandise credit cards they give their girls. I know, we took your power bank, we took the one you bought with the COVID relief that was supposed to have security and was supposed to be part of a capital outlay in connection with your understanding that the COVID-19 relief was actually what from the government. And that every purchase you made was completely strategic and you kept all of the receipts and you also made sure to note it because you understood it as a capital outlay. We stole that and we stole the flashlight and we stole a couple other things specifically strategically, including a receipt from a specific book and including a pair of shoes that had some sort of sentimental value because we knew exactly what we were telling you we were stealing, bitch. And we intentionally didn't take the fucking security because your little girl ass is supposed to be unfucking secure. Go. Here's your merchandise credit. What are you going to buy? You going to buy that dress to get your fucking wife back? You're going to buy that dress to dress up nice for us and make sure that you demonstrate you finally got the fucking point? Or are you going to buy the power bank? Well, here's the problem. I can't buy the power bank because I don't have a fucking way to verify my identity. Would it have made a difference, asshole? Would it have made a difference if I tried to buy that fucking little girl's sundress instead of the backup power bank? If I had decided to try to purchase that pretty sundress that's in the size of a grown woman, but it's meant to evoke that sweet little girl who's all innocent, they've been wearing around downtown fucking Dallas all throughout the month of June. If I bought that dress to show you that I got what you did, nah, I didn't wake up in the middle of the night when you were trying to program my unconscious to be attracted to that specific dress. I didn't see what you were doing. I like that dress. It makes me feel like a little girl again. Maybe someone will think I'm pretty. If I tried to buy that, would you need me to verify my identity? Or did you want to see my, what? My driver's license? Did you want to see my what, huh? My transportation workers identification credential card when I was trying to buy that fucking power bank? Is that what you wanted to see, or is this what you wanted to see?